details, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.
Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of The Mediator with me, your host, Brian West, here to give you the top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made in this week. Now, as usual, I'll give you the top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made it in first. Then I may do a movie clip, a skit, or something that's going on in the community, or a trailer. And then I'll give you the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it in this week. So let's waste no time. Let's get to it. Story number 1, animals need love too. One story pointing out the neglect that some local animals have been dealing with in these hard times has made local headlines. The story highlights how Perry Township has been seeking volunteers to care for over 200 animals. The story goes in detail about the neglect that these animals have faced in harsh conditions. The centerpiece of the story is that animal caretakers are hard to find, and most of them operate off of donations. So please show the animals some love. Story number 2. Ohioans are now getting the message that we need to look towards the future. One article focusing on a decline in household income, job losses, a decline in educated citizens, and the decay of some neighborhoods has put the attention on the future. Ohioans are now wising up, and many are trying to focus on the future. According to this report, the article also listed water, hospitals, arts, and highways in the discussion forum as well. It's safe to say that a lot of Ohioans are at a crossroad when it comes to looking towards the future. The story is still developing. Story number 3. Is there enough money to help schools fight COVID-19? The state is set to release $100 million in virus aid to local schools across the Mahoning County. Money watchers all over the county wonder if money is really the solution and if it's being directed into the right places. The COVID-19 relief funds will be used to buy laptops for students and to buy the supplies needed to meet safety standards. So far, it's looking like most districts will be turning to online courses, even as the president is pro-school. This is another story that is still developing locally and across the United States. Story number 4. Businesses and residents still need a solid plan to recovery. With so many events and businesses shattered by COVID-19, local businesses and residents are really concerned about the future. Vendors got some bad news during the past week when the Canfield Fair decided not to have the fair this year. A lot of businesses and residents are finding creative ways to stay afloat. Some are choosing to stay off the radar by taking matters into their own hands, and some are choosing to open up home businesses online because they do not have enough confidence in the state's plan. While businesses and residents try to keep up, the details inside of this story could take unusual turns as the story continues to develop. Story number 5. Nearly 500 local businesses took COVID-19 money, some in the millions. A lot of local businesses took out PPP loans, and some got millions to keep employees on the workroom floor. This story really highlights the state that local businesses are in. Most companies use the funds to keep workers on the payroll, and some just needed the extra help to stay afloat. But for many local businesses, the PPP help was still not enough. Many businesses have already gone under, and some are still searching for a lifeline. This is another big story that keeps developing. Story number 6. Can the electric vehicle market really surge in the valley? Senator Rob Portman, like many others, are trying hard to get GM to continue to invest in Lordstown Motors. GM is reportedly planning to invest in a battery plant and battery-powered vehicles. As this story hangs on, it's really based on the potential to impact the electric vehicle market that has already been set back by COVID-19 locally. If Lordstown and GM could work together, they might be able to develop a chain of new innovative ways that could really impact the future of the electric vehicle market here locally and across the world. Let's see how this story develops in the coming weeks, especially as COVID-19 hangs around. Story number 7 in the top 2 local headlines and developing news stories that made it in this week. Some local residents are starting to understand how violent situations escalate. A string of shootings, overdoses, along with family and relationship drama this week in the news highlights how one violent situation leads to another. As the city's homicide rate jumped near or above the 17 mark this week, it's safe to say that the people who are aware of how these situations escalate are starting to take actions the best way they can. Such stories home in on why most cities have a hard time controlling violence and drug issues, especially when it's hard for some to walk away from violent situations. This is another big story to keep an eye on. Story number 8 in the top local headline and developing news story that made it in this week. Some local community nurses are still concerned about where the COVID-19 funds are being spent. With so much money being spent to battle COVID-19, many caregivers are wondering if any of that money will be spent on their wages. Show me the money. There are still some nursing homes and health facilities that are not focusing on the workers, which is the main solution to defeating COVID-19. Some workers are voicing their opinions about the treatment of patients, wages, and the equipment plus supplies needed to do their job properly. This story is still developing as the COVID-19 saga continues. Well, those are our top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made it in this week. I'm going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. You're in the Mediator with me, Brian West. I'll be right back with the top international headlines and developing news stories that made it in this week.
If you need help, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.
If you want to check out the stories that almost made it in or did make it in, go to our Twitter feed on our website. Check out everything. All of the sources are there. And go to the website. It's method8inc.com, method8inc.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor a program.